So the 2017 NBA draft has come and gone. It's officially in the books, and yeah, that just happened. So it feels only right to come on here and talk about what happened to give you my 2017 NBA draft recap. Oh, baby, I bet you've been holding on to your britches for this, bitches. Anyways, the activity really started before the draft with the Lakers' big trade with the Nets, sending D'Angelo Russell to Brooklyn, getting back Brook Lopez and his expiring contract, and the 27th overall pick. Most importantly for them, to get the salary cap space and clear the way for who they were going to take at number 2 in this draft. And then you had the Dwight Howard trade to Charlotte for whatever reason that is still unbeknownst to me. You know it's bad, and you know you suck, and you know you can't keep your dingling in your pants and out of some ratchet-ass fucking gym rats that you want to sit there and put a bunch of bastard babies in when your hometown team signs you and trades you after one damn year. That's Dwight Howard in a nutshell. So you got former All-Stars on the move. You figured there was a chance that Thursday night could be crazy. And ultimately it was. Now, before I talk about the draft itself, the one thing that really aggravated me about all of this was ESPN giving the go-ahead to their reporters to reveal the picks online ahead of time. Why? You sit there and go on social media, and it's getting spoiled 2 to 3 picks ahead of time for you in certain cases. Why do we need to do this? Why can't the NBA kind of crack down on this and say, you guys aren't going to release the actual pick itself ahead of time because you're undercutting the fucking TV product? It was bad enough the NBA season was trash and the finals were trash. At least let me have an interesting NBA draft where I'm surprised by some things. It's hard to be surprised when you know the picks are going to happen 15 minutes before they're announced. How dumb. Explains why ESPN's letting go of a bunch of people. Oh, and by the way, for keeping Michelle Beadle's ugly beetle-looking ass and letting go of John Clayton, ESPN, fuck you! Hashtag ponytail rules. Anyway, when we're talking about this year's NBA draft, there wasn't a whole lot of suspense with the first 2 picks. You knew that the Sixers were trading up to number 1 to take Markelle Fultz, the point guard out of Washington. And you pretty much, in the last couple of days, they'd come to the realization that the Los Angeles Lakers were going to take Lonzo Ball. So, starting with Markelle Fultz first, ultimately it's going to be put up and shut up time for the Philadelphia 76ers, their fan base, and this whole trust the process and retweet Armageddon bullshit. You've been in this process for really 5 years now, 5 seasons now. It's time to produce some type of results. And I know a lot of people are singing the praises of the 76ers and kissing their ass and talking about how wonderful this process is. But ultimately, the 3 cornerstones of what you're trying to do are a center that has played a little over 30 games in 3 years, a 6'10 guy that you're trying to play at point guard that couldn't even lead his LSU team in his 1 season in college at the NCAA tournament, who, by the way, didn't play a single regular season game in 2016-2017, and Markelle Fultz, who led his Washington team to a total of 9 victories, who, again, also has not played a single NBA regular season game. Obviously, the future looks brighter for the Philadelphia 76ers, but brighter is not good enough. At some point in time, this process has to be about not accumulating draft pick currency, not sitting there and drafting and stashing a bunch of foreign big men. At some point in time, you got to produce some results on the basketball court. You got to start making the playoffs and progressing towards being an NBA champion. Otherwise, if you don't, you're going to be in the same position 15 years from now. Believe me, I know that life. I know that life. But for Sixers fans, let them have their moment. We'll see what ends up happening. But just again, a polite suggestion to the fan base, maybe we shouldn't talk shit about a tanking and draft currency accumulation process. Maybe we should talk shit once our team actually wins some basketball games. Just a thought. But of course, that wasn't the biggest deal out of the top 2 picks. You knew ESPN secretly had chubbers all throughout their production team, all the people on camera, because they couldn't wait for the Lakers to take Lonzo Ball at number 2, because again, it was going to be about LeVar Ball. And the Big Baller brand had their moment to shine, their moment to celebrate as they're staying home in Los Angeles. Phenomenal stuff for them, I suppose. And LeVar Ball cutting one of the great freaking awesome heel promos that I've heard in quite some time. The WWE needs this guy at WrestleMania 34 in New Orleans, damn it. That's how you get heat. That's heat right there. He said, I knew about it before everybody else did. What a glorious moment it was. But you know, Lonzo, to his credit, knows his dad's a fucking knucklehead, and he took everything pretty much in stride. And now for the Lakers, you're talking about a team that brings in Lonzo Ball with getting rid of Mozgov and taking on Brook Lopez's expiring contract. Talking about a team with potentially in the next offseason $45 to $55 million in cap space. The Lakers are close. They're real close to being big-time players again in the NBA. Now all it is for Lakers fans is get the fuck through this season and move on to the 2018 offseason. And then the shit-talking will commence. What else do we have going on in this draft, though, outside of the top two? Obviously, Boston, there was a lot of focus and attention on them. Were they going to trade for Paul George? Or are they going to trade for Jimmy Butler? Ultimately, they didn't. They went from 1 to 3, and they ended up drafting Jayson Tatum. It was either Tatum or Jackson, and apparently they like the offensive upside of Jayson Tatum more. We'll see what this does for them in terms of free agency, whether they're pursuing Blake Griffin and or Gordon Hayward, how this is all going to fit together. But the Boston Celtics at least got another guy that can score, and that was something they desperately needed. So it makes a lot of sense. You had an early run on point guards with point guards going 1, 2, 5, 8, and 9. That wasn't that surprising, I don't think, to a lot of people because the point guard class at the top was really, really good. You had 3 Kentucky players go in the lottery, and Calipari, of course, made sure he got his face time on television. He made sure everybody knew that I had 3 guys in the lottery. We're great and we're awesome, and we can't wait to get 5 more guys just like this so we can get bounced in the Sweet 16 next year. But when you can sit there and say, hey, if you're only going to go to college for 1 year anyways, I'll get you to the league. And I'll get you the right type of hype, the right type of exposure. I'll put you in a good system where you can show off what you need to show off. If you're a young college kid, I frankly have to ask, why the fuck would you go play for Mike Krzyzewski? Even though, granted, he had a guy go 3 and a guy go 12 in this draft. When you can go to Kentucky, he puts more guys in the first round. Just saying. Some other big news was the Paul George trade that didn't happen. The clock is ticking for the Indiana Pacers. They know they've got him for 1 year, and that's it. So the pressure is on them to trade him, get something for him now, because if they don't, then they're going to be potentially up against the trade deadline. And by that point in time, how much is somebody going to really be willing to give up to get Paul George for potentially a couple of month rental if it's not the Los Angeles Lakers? Also, you're talking about the potential of not being able to trade him, even though you don't have a ton of leverage in this situation anyways, and potentially seeing Paul George leave next offseason and getting absolutely nothing for him. There's a chance, there's a possibility. So, you know, not being able to get Paul George dealt on this night felt like it was a somewhat important thing for the Pacers, to do, and they just didn't get the job done. But unfortunately for me, a team who did get the job done because they're doing what they're doing, and again, I warn you Sixers fans, you can buy into that trust the process bullshit, but if you're not careful, you're going to end up like the Chicago Bulls 19 years later rebuilding again. The Chicago Bulls, with the big move of the night, trading Jimmy Butler in the 16th overall pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn, and the 7th overall pick, which ended up being Lauri Markkanen. Now, maybe there was a thought in Chicago that the time had come to move on from him. Maybe there was a thought that you needed to strike while the iron was hot and they weren't going to get a better offer. It's hard to believe that this would be the absolute best offer they could potentially have gotten in this situation, but this is what they got. Now, in terms of my full anger / feelings / hope for this deal, I'll cover that in another video. But Minnesota definitely made a statement here. They said, we want to contend. We want to be in the playoffs this year. We think Jimmy Butler is a guy to help us take that next step, and pairing him with Karl Anthony Towns and Andrew Wiggins is definitely a step in the right direction. If Minnesota doesn't make the playoffs and isn't at least a 5 seed in the Western Conference this year, then Thibodeau should be fired, period. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Gar Forman and John Paxson do everything they can to establish they have no clue what the hell they're doing. They have no vision and no direction for this franchise, and frankly, they just don't care. So now we're right back to square fucking zero again. Yay! The ghost of Jerry Krause lives. Oh, we really like Elton Brand. Oh, we really like Marcus Weiser. Oh, fucking Penguin. Ugh. Most importantly of all, I think, for Knicks fans, though, is Spike Lee lives. He didn't jump off the goddamn Brooklyn Bridge because of Phil Jackson or whatever the hell Phil Jackson was trying to accomplish here. Because Porzingis didn't go to a stupid exit interview for your busted-ass organization. All the while on draft night, reportedly your owner's at a fucking concert. You want to try and trade the one real commodity you have, the one real franchise player you have, the one real star that you have, because we're not counting Carmelo Anthony at this point because we know it's a matter of time before he's fucking gone, and he's already surely mentally, if not physically, checked out of the Knicks situation because Phil Jackson didn't want the guy, then paid him a bunch of money to keep him long term just so that way he could fucking undercut him and sabotage him every chance he got. This is Phil Jackson. It's tough for me because he coached my Bulls to 6 NBA championships. So we always have my respect for that and my admiration for that. Then he went on to LA and won 5 more NBA championships with 2 different configurations of Laker teams. He's got 11 championships. How could a dude that's won so much so consistently as a head coach be so incompetent and so idiotic as an NBA team president? I don't know. But for those of you that were worried, Spike Lee lives. He didn't jump off the Brooklyn Bridge. Knicks fans can, for now, stop with any thoughts of doing like ritualistic jersey burnings or anything like that. Burning Phil Jackson in effigy. You know, let's not do any of that right now. You've still got Kristaps. You've still got the Latvian Bear. So that means something. But it was a fun night. I mean, it was a good draft class. So that helped the interest and intrigue here. You're not just sitting there and saying, well, this guy's a scrub, that guy's a scrub. Some other things that stood out, Markelle Fultz, maybe no more shoes made from basketballs, okay? De'Aaron Fox, your watch game was magnificent. Magnificent. I hope Sacramento realizes the future star that they've got. Unfortunately, he had to go to Sacramento. But good for him. He doesn't seem to mind that much. So what the hell? The joys of youth. You don't realize how crappy a city and an organization are until you get there. See Boogie Cousins. Anyways, that was the 2017 NBA draft. It was a fun night. You know, you had some shocking and surprising things happen. Quite a bit of movement in terms of trades, which wasn't that big of a surprise. But really now, the NBA draft was just an inconvenience to get to free agency and the offseason, which is what we look to next. But let me know what you think about your team's performance in the NBA draft, what you thought of the night in general, what you thought about Markelle Fultz's baller shoes, what you think about the Big Baller brand going to Los Angeles, and anything else up to and including the ridiculousness of the Jimmy Butler trade. Let me know in the comments below.